Hello and welcome to this Jolly Phonics session. My name is Dan and I work for Beyond Ourselves, and we are here together for this fifth lesson in Jolly Phonics. Now, if you've missed the earlier lessons, please do go back and have a look at them. They are all saved in our live videos on our Facebook page. And there you'll see that in the first session, we really do talk about an introduction and an overview of Jolly Phonics. So that's really kind of looking at what's been the history of how we've taught literacy, English literacy in Zambia. Jalita and Malenga, what works about it, but what doesn't work about it? And why is relying on rote learning and repetition, why is that leaving some of our learners behind? We'll talk about why the Jolly Phonics is successful and the strategy that it uses, which is synthetic phonics, which is what we also use in PLP in Zambian language, where we learn the sounds of a language, we learn how to put those sounds together to be able to read and spell words. And so that's session one, and then in the second sessions, well, in the next 4 sessions, really that's kind of been going into depth into what are the steps of a Jolly Phonics lesson. And then we've had the theory of that in the classroom with me, and then we've seen the practical of how that looks when you're delivering it in your classrooms. And that's been videos that we've had from my colleague Matthews, as well as colleagues or teachers that are implementing Jolly Phonics effectively in their classrooms. So that's been where we've been so far. And then today, this is where we're looking. Today we're going to be looking a bit about consonant blends and marking. Then we're going to spend some time looking at tricky words before finishing on looking at CPD opportunities and how you can really grow in your development and your journey of this. So, before we get started, please do make sure that you're dropping us a line. Tell us where you're joining us from today. It's always great to know where people are at. I am actually not in Zambia right now. I'm going to be coming back to Zambia in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm actually filming this from Canada, and I don't know if you want to see the view out of my window, but it is, I don't know if you can see that. Is that going to work? No. It is snowy outside. It is cold and snowy. The temperature is minus something big. So yes, looking forward to getting back to Zambia for that, for some better weather. So that's where I'm joining you from today. I'd love to know where you're joining us from. Also, I see lots of comments from people saying about how they're enjoying it or they're learning lots or that it's educative. If that's the case, do tag your colleagues. Do make sure that they're joining us as well. We don't want to leave anyone behind. You know that Jolly Phonics doesn't leave children behind, so why should we leave our colleagues behind as well? So do make sure you're tagging them so that they can join us too. I'm aware that network and power issues means that people drop in and drop out. So please remember that these videos, you can watch them on Facebook Live later on, or you can also find them on our YouTube channel as well. So there's lots of ways to make sure that you're catching up and that you're coming on this journey with us. Okay, so before we go on, let's just have a look at this page here of our PowerPoint presentation. So here we go. It's not got up for some reason. I'm not quite sure why this hasn't worked. Let's see what's going on. So whilst I'm waiting for technology to catch up, the page that you can see there is talking about following us on Facebook. So if you haven't followed us on Facebook yet, that really is something that we encourage you to make sure that you're doing, because that way you can make sure that you are not left behind when we are doing these presentations. Also, we share other videos of what we're up to and where we're at in our travels. There we go. This looks like it's going to catch up with us now. Sorry. So the slide also talks about making sure that you've got the Jolly Phonics Lessons app. So the Jolly Phonics Lessons app is a great resource because it's completely free and it's got all of the lessons on. It's got songs, it's got stories, it's got games and activities, but it's also got assessment tools as well. So the Jolly Phonics Lessons app is really an excellent resource. And if you've got an Android phone, then you'll also find that it is completely free as well in Zambia. So this should work now. Fantastic. There we go. So this is where we were at over the last few days. We have been going through the Jolly Phonics 5 skills. And there we've got the 5 skills as we've been going through them. So Jolly Phonics starts with learning the letter sounds. So when we say learning the letter sounds, that's how to pronounce them and is what they look like. So then we look at letter formation, and learning letter formation is really how do you write these. So that's handwriting. It's making sure that your letters are the right size, that they've got the right starting point, and making sure that you're forming them in the correct directions, okay? And what we can do is that when you're teaching this, depending on what level you're teaching at, you might go for print, pre-cursive, which then also obviously leads into cursive handwriting as well. So if you're doing this at baby class, or let's say ECE now, so if you're doing this at ECE level, you're going to be focused more on learning the letter sounds. It's going to be more about songs and activities and stories, and that's going to be your focus. When it comes to letter formation, you might want them to be familiar, but that's when they're going to be doing some of the gross motor skills with beads or with stones or writing in flour, but you're not so worried about the size of letters at that point. But when your learners come on to grade 1, you want to make sure that they're writing those letters at the correct size, that letters are sitting on the line appropriately. So then Jolly Phonics, skills number 1 and 2 really are about acquiring knowledge, whereas skills 3 and 4 is about applying that knowledge to reading and writing. So blending, we blend the sounds that we've been teaching our learners. As you teach your learners, they apply those new sounds to blending, to try and use those new sounds in words that only use, here's the thing, only use the sounds that you're teaching that day and sounds that you've previously been teaching your learners. So you're not asking your learners to read something that they've got no exposure to. And so in our first lesson, we looked at that Arabic word, and you'll remember that how you felt as a learner looking at that word and being asked to memorize it. If you don't know the sounds within that word, then you're going to really struggle to write that word. Okay? And then we're going to look at we looked at sounding as well. And so sounding really was, how do you identify the sounds that you've learnt? So the sounds that you've taught your learners, it's about learners trying to write or spell words that use those sounds. And again, it's about developing that skill of being able to identify the sounds that you can hear in words and then writing that down. Okay, so those are the 5 skills, and the last skill is tricky words, and we're going to be looking at that today. But we've been looking at the first 4 skills particularly when it comes to the steps of a Jolly Phonics lesson. So if we keep on clicking through this, is that going to work now? Maybe it's not. So there we go. Sorry, it just likes to go asleep apparently. So here we are. These 8 steps are going to be taught. These 5 skills are going to be taught through the 8 steps of a Jolly Phonics lesson. Okay, I feel like my laptop is going to not behave today. So let's rethink. What I can do instead is maybe just pause this for a second, okay? Okay, well, let's move on instead. Let's not worry too much about it. So right now, what we're going to be thinking about is what's the difference between consonant blends and digraphs, because this is a common question that we get from teachers. And it's one of those things where consonant blends are really important for helping children to increase their fluency in reading. So initially, as children are reading a word, if they're reading a word like this, cat, then as they're first learning to read, you're going to be making sure that they're developing that blending skill of identifying the sounds that we've got here. So the first sound that we've got in this word is k. So they're using their sound knowledge there. And then we've got a, and then we've got t. So once children have learnt all of these sounds, that is a safe word, and they should be able to have a go at blending those sounds together. So they should go k and a. That's together, that makes ka, cat, helps us to get cat. Okay, so cat, cat. That's helpful. So as children encounter longer words, then it becomes less relevant. So if I look at the word like this, as we look at a word that's a bit longer, so the word blend, it gets a bit trickier for learners to go, again, identify the sounds. So we've got b, l, e, n, d. But you can see how it's harder for a learner to go b, l, e, n, d. Like to go all the way through the word is a bit tricky, because by the time they get to the end, they might have forgotten the beginning of the word. So as we get longer words, that's when it's useful to start making sure that our learners are practicing consonant blends. And here's the important thing. A consonant blend is two or more letters that can get snapped together to help us increase our reading fluency. But when you snap them together, you can still hear the two sounds. Okay, and that's the really important thing, because unlike a digraph, so for instance, in the word sheep, yeah, we've got two letters together, and it's not that they're two letters that make, when these two letters are together, they make one sound. So for instance, it's not s, but together that is one sound. Whereas when we've got here in the word blend, we've still got the two sounds. When we go blah, blah, we've still got two sounds there. You can hear them, can't you? You can hear b and l. Yeah, so bl. Okay, so consonant blends are when we are practicing putting two sounds together. You can still hear both sounds, but it helps us to read more quickly because we can go bl, and. And there, when we've done that, it helps us to read the word, or to read and hear the word blend more easily. Blend. Yeah? Good. So a consonant blend is two letters that can be snapped together to aid our reading fluency, whereas a digraph is two letters that when they come together, they make a new sound. So that's why this word here, we don't say s, s, but it's when the two letters, when S and H come together, they make the sh sound. Okay? So, let's maybe test you out on this then. So, let me write some words on the board, and I want you to tell me how many sounds you think there are in those words. So, if I say the word desk, desk, how many sounds are there in the word desk? I'm going to write a few up on the board so that it gives you a chance to work on this whilst I'm writing. So let's go for this. I'm going to be a bit trickier here, maybe. How many sounds are there in the word jolly? And how many sounds are there in the word sheep? And how many sounds are there in the word bench? Okay, so you have a go at that. Write the word and write down how many sounds you think there are in that word. Okay? Whilst you've got a bit of time doing that, I'm going to see if I can figure out my PowerPoint that seems to have gone wrong. And let's see what's going on. So you carry on. I'm going to put this screen on. Oh no, you need to see the words, don't you? So I'm going to move out the way and let you see those words. So desk, jolly, sheep, and bench. How many sounds are there in each of those words? Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing some of your answers come through. Bits by bits. Okay, I like the way you've done that, Chansa. Thank you. You've listed yours off. Well done. All right. I'm not sure what my PowerPoint's doing, but let's have a look at what you're doing. So, I've only got one answer so far. So if you're still there, yeah, have a go at doing that. Well done, Irene. Thank you very much. If you're not feeling brave enough to comment in front of everybody else, feel free to just kind of write it down on a piece of paper or just at least think about it for yourself. But let's have a look at this. I am still not sure what's going on with my PowerPoint, but maybe I'm going to close it and reopen it. Let's see how that goes. So let's have a look at your answers though. So yeah, just a few more coming in. There we go. All right, so the first word, desk. When we look at this together, what you can see is, let's identify the sounds. So lots of you, I'm not going to look at your answers in too much detail. So the first sound that we've got is D. Then we've got E, then S, and then finally K. Okay, so we've got D, E, S, K, desk. Jolly is a tricky one. I decided to give you a tricky one because it's got a double consonant in. Okay, so let's have a look at that together. We've got J, O, and then there's two L's, but if you remember, when we've got two of the same letter, we don't go L, but instead we just hear the sound once, so L. So J, O, L. And then finally, letter Y there is doing something a bit tricky. It's not saying its normal sound. It's not saying Y, but instead it's making the E sound. So we'd actually say it's making its alternative sound. Okay, so this is the E sound, but it's the alternative spelt with letter Y. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sounds in jolly as well. Okay, then the word sheep. Let's see what you said for sheep, because that's a good one. Okay, good answers. I like that. So sheep is where we have got some digraphs in there already. So we've got letter S and H. When they are together, they make the sh sound. So that's one sound. Good. And then we've got the E sound made by two letters again. So that's another digraph. So that's two sounds. And then finally, we've got the P sound. Okay, so again, we've got 3 sounds there, 4 sounds here, 4 sounds here. And finally, bench. How many sounds have we got there? So yes, we've got B, E, N, Ch. So we've got 4 sounds there as well. Okay, so if you got that right, well done. If you got something wrong there, don't worry too much about it. Hoping that you have learnt something from doing that. as well. Okay, so my PowerPoint is fired up again. We're going to need it to show some videos, so I do need this today. But in the meantime, we can carry on with what we're doing. So yes, even though we've got some, oh, we didn't have many consonant blends there. So let me do one more that's got consonant blends in. So let's look at this word here. Let's go for clap. So clap, how many sounds are there in clap? So be careful with this one. Okay, so do have a look at that and see how you get on. So okay, all right, let's see what you've got. Let's see if I'm also working this. All right, I can put that over there, I think. All right, at least we've got something going on. Beautiful. Okay, so let's see what you've got. So for clap, yeah, so clap, sometimes people get confused because this is a consonant blend, but we don't say that it's one sound. Remember, a consonant blend is a blend. It's not a digraph. It's not a new sound. You can still hear the two sounds kl. When I say kl, you can hear k and you can hear right? That's what makes the kl. So we've got two sounds there. And then we've got the a and the p. So altogether, the word clap has got 4 sounds. Well done. And if you got that right, you can give yourself a clap. So that's good as well, isn't it? Awesome. All right, let's go to this then. Let's see how we're getting on. I'm going to just hope for the best here. There we go. So we've kind of looked at that. So one way that we think about consonant blends is that it aids fluency, because if you think of a child when they're reading, well, when they're walking upstairs, initially they'll go up one step at a time. B, l, e, n, d. One sound at a time. Whereas the idea of learning consonant blends is that you can go a bit faster. So let me move out the way here. You can get your learners to go bl, e, nd. And do you see, by having smaller steps, by kind of putting those sounds together, by snapping those sounds together, and you can hear bl, e, nd. It's easier for a child to then read with more fluency. And it's the same thing, like when children are coming across words that are longer and more challenging, they need to make sure that they know those consonant blends so that they can read with increased fluency. Okay, all right. So if you go to our Facebook page, I'm not sure if I've said this enough in other places, but this F in the corner here, that F signifies, yeah, the one just up there, shows that this is a slide that is on our Facebook page. So as I put these slides up, you're going to sometimes be trying to write things down, or you're trying to take screenshots, but instead you can actually find this as a slide on our Facebook page. It's in a photo album that's called Slides for Sharing. Okay, so you can find that there, but there's examples of consonant blends, consonant vowel snaps as well. So you'll find information like that. And there's also, if you've got the Jolly Phonics teaching aid, so remember this resource that we're looking at here. So you might have one already that looks a bit like this, or maybe you've got a color copy that looks like this. But on there, in the introduction, you'll find information about consonant blends and digraphs and how they differ as well. Okay, so that's all really helpful. Now, when we've been looking at learning the sounds, it's really important that you also make sure that you're practicing with your learners short vowels and long vowels. And that's where this comes in handy, okay? Oh man, I did a pun again. I don't mean to do that. But this is the vowel hand song, okay? And it's a really simple song, but it's really effective for practicing short vowel sounds and long vowel sounds. And the tune to the song goes like this, if this is going to work. No. Eesh, today. Okay, so the song goes like this. It goes a, e, o, a, e, o, a, e, o, a, short vowels that we use. A vowel is in every word, every word, every word. A vowel is in every word that we read or write. So the first thing that we're doing is we're practicing those short vowel sounds, and that's where we're looking at our fingertips. So let me move this. Oh, let me move me out of the way. I'm going to be over here for a bit, okay? So, oh, I'm going to move that there. Perfect, look at that. So, we're practicing our short vowel sounds, okay? And what we're doing is we're pointing to our fingertips as we're doing this because it's just a short tap, okay? And it should be a really short sound. The short vowel sounds, unfortunately, because of the relationship between vowel sounds in English and in Zambian languages, we often find that the short vowel sounds get made a bit longer in Zambia. But you want to make sure that it's really short. It's just a, e, o, a, e, o, a. It's not a, e, o, a, because when I is said too long, it ends up coming out a bit like E. And that's how we end up with people not going to the filling station, but they go to the feeling station. Yeah. And that's a really important difference, okay? So we want to make sure that we've got the correct pronunciation of those short vowel sounds. And then we also want to practice the long vowel sounds, okay? So we've got A, E, I, O, U, A, E, I, O, U, A, E, I, O, U are long vowels that we use. So the long vowel sounds, it's a longer sound, so therefore that's why we're going down the finger, okay? And what's also really interesting about the long vowel sounds is that you know that they're the same as the letter names, yeah? So we've got letter A, but that's the A, long vowel sound, A sound. And that's the long vowel sound for A, yeah? So A, you can see up here, let's show you over here. So A, look on the hand here, A is the short vowel sound, but when you say its name, A, that's when you get the long vowel sound. Yeah? So when you say its name, E, that's the long vowel sound, E. Yeah? So we want our learners to know that relationship between A and A, E and E, I and I, O and O, A and U. Because what often happens in English is that you'll find that when you see a vowel, it's often making one of those two sounds. And it's really important that our learners are really familiar with those sounds. Okay, so that is the vowel hand song. You want to practice it, but guess what? If you want to see it in action, you can see it in videos on Facebook as well. So there's lots of things that you can do there. So once your learners know the 42 sounds, and if you remember here, let's go back to this image here. So as they learn these sounds, and if you remember, there's actually over 170 different ways of spelling these sounds. English is a really complicated language because England is an island that's had invaders from all of these different countries over the centuries. And when the French came, they ended up leaving their French influence. We've had Greek influence and Latin influence. We've got Germanic influence. We've got all of these different languages that have influenced the English language, and they've all left different spellings behind. And that's why we've got some words with some really interesting spellings. And so we've got these 42 sounds, but they can be spelt in a number of different ways. And so what we encourage, though, is that when learners know these 42 sounds, when you've taught them all of the sounds, and remember, as you're teaching them, you're also developing that skill of blending and sounding. But that's when our learners are going to start trying to write words, and they're not going to get it perfect. So have a look at this next image here. And what word is the learner trying to write here? Okay, so have a look at that and then write a comment for me in the comment section. What word do you think our learner is trying to write in that? Let me go through the sounds together. So we've got that first sound, which is j. Then we've got o. Then we've got l. Then we've got two e's together. So we've got e. So we've got j, o, l, e. I think we might know what word that is. And then we've got f, o, n, x. And the word that we've got down the bottom is f, o, n, x. So these words here, what does it say? It says, let's see if you're getting these right. Yeah, it says Jolly Phonics, doesn't it? Yeah. So this was actually written by a 4-year-old that had gone through Jolly Phonics, and at this point they had learnt all of these sounds. And this is the great thing, and this is where we want to get our learners to be. Then they themselves wrote Jolly Phonics. It wasn't copy it off the board. It wasn't here's a sentence and fill in the missing words. But it was this child wanted to write Jolly Phonics, and they wrote Jolly Phonics. And the way they did that was exactly the way that you tried writing Chem yesterday, where you're listening to the sounds and you're thinking, well, this child, he thought jolly. So j. Oh, I know what a j looks like. I know what a o looks like. And then when it came to E, he thought, I know what E looks like. And he's right. It does look like this. And it looks like that in words like tree and B and C. But in Jolly Phonics, in English, sometimes the letter Y also makes an E sound. And that's why after Jolly Phonics, after you've taught these 42 sounds, that's when you come on to Pupil Book 2, and it teaches some of those extra spellings, some of those alternative spellings to sounds that they are already familiar with. Okay, so at the end of Pupil Book 1, at the end of learning these 42 sounds, that's when learners go on to Pupil Book 2 and they start learning some of those alternative spellings for sounds that are common to them. Okay, so it's really important that when your learners do things like that, that you're not marking their work and saying, oh, no, you spelt it wrong, but you're actually celebrating it because it's like, oh, I can understand what you've written. Okay, well done, that does say Jolly Phonics. And the proof of that is that in the comments section, so many of you wrote Jolly Phonics. You could read what he's written. He just hasn't spelt it exactly correct, but he's spelt it phonetically correct. Okay, so obviously that's good for now, if children can do this. But that's not where we want to leave them, because we want to make sure that they can spell words correctly. So before we get on to the next slide, I want you to have a look at these. See if you can see some of these other names. So this, the boy that wrote this is actually my youngest son. And so he was trying to write the names of the other people on the Beyond Ourselves team. So he wrote this name here. I hope you can read this, but it's Sheba. Sheba is what he wrote. Yeah, not spelled exactly right, but he had a good go. And then this one, I love this one. He's written D-A-N-Y-L, Daniel, which is a tricky name to write. And then he's written Z-U-L-U, Daniel Zulu, again, another member of our team there. And then he's written here, see if you could get this name. He's written M-A-F-M-A-F-Y-U-Z, Matthews. Isn't that cool? So he did that because he wanted to write words, because once children know sounds, they want to try and have a go at applying that. Okay? So have a look at this sentence here and see if you can read this one. Okay? So Maybe don't type this one, but just think, read it through to yourself and see if you can read it. And what they've written is, let's see if you can see this. At school, I hope you got school, I like learning to read and write. Okay, so they had a go at writing that. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. They had a go at writing that, and that's how they sounded it out, and that's how they used their phonics knowledge to do that. So that was really good. Now, obviously, that's not where we want to leave our learners. So if they're doing that, then we want to make sure that we do teach them some other words as well. So maybe before we teach them the alternative sounds, that's when we want to introduce tricky words to them. Because actually in this word, in this sentence, the word I and to, if you see those changing into red there, I and to are really common words that children can learn to spell really easily. And so that's why we're going to be looking at tricky words. So tricky words, we're going to start this off by watching a video that I hope will work first time. So let's move out of the way and let's go to this.
Skill number 5, tricky words. You might be a teacher out there and you're struggling on how to go about teaching tricky words. Well, the first question we are going to answer is, what are tricky words? Tricky words are words that contain irregular spelled sounds or sounds that have not yet been taught. Let's get to know this. There are 2 types of tricky words. Tricky words can be difficult to work out because they don't follow the rules that learners know. Number 1, words that are mostly regular apart from a few parts that are trying to trick you. These words are tricky until we have taught the rules that help learners to read and write these words. For example, the word she. The first 2 letters are regular. It's a digraph where the 2 letters, letter S and letter H, are making one sound, sh. But the last letter, letter E, isn't making the sound eh. Instead, it is trying to trick us by saying its name instead, the long vowel sound, which is E. Teach the children to identify those parts to help them learn the spelling. Secondly, shorter words where the word is nearly or tricky. For instance, Y, 1, 2. It makes more sense to memorize these words rather than trying to learn the tricky parts. The first thing you can do as a teacher, try by all means to explain to learners that they need to take part and be able to identify which part of the word is tricking them. It is a useful exercise for children to look at a tricky word and identify the part of the word that is not following the rules. For example, do. It is worth pointing out that letter D is making the sound we would expect, D, but the letter O is making an U sound. In this word, the part which is tricking us is letter O. Instead of sounding O, the sound is U, do. The main method that we use to teach tricky words is look, say, copy, cover, write, check. I look, I say, I copy, I cover, write, check. Often we can check the spelling of tricky words by seeing if it looks right when written. When learning to spell tricky words, it can be useful for learners to put boxes around letters and think about the shape of the word. When learning to spell tricky words, it can be useful for learners to pay particular attention to the size of letters. Is it a tall letter, small letter, or 4 letter? Say. It is also really important to spell a tricky word using the letter names. Say the tricky word and then say the letter names that spell it. For example, the word she, S-H-E, she. Cover, write, S-H-E. Cover up the word and then try writing it from memory. Think about its shape and say the letter names as you write it out. Encourage learners to think about the letter shapes. They must always say the letter names as they write out the tricky word. It is worth repeating the last two steps a couple of times, seeing if you can write the word correctly 2 more times. Practice, practice, practice. Teachers, for more information, please refer to the teacher's book on page 19 and page 20. It has got additional helpful hints for teaching tricky words. Don't forget, if you send us videos of you teaching, you could earn yourself TCZ approved CPD points. Stay jolly!
Great, so that was a video from our own Matthews, and you know that this video is available on Facebook as well. It's also available on our website, and we'll have it on our YouTube channel as well. So it is around there. Oh, and it just wants to keep playing apparently. So do bear that in mind, that you can watch that again and again. But here are the highlights that we talk about on this. So the key thing is, first of all, learning the sounds is great for most decodable words, but, well, it's good for decodable words, but lots of words are not completely decodable, and that there's a part of that word that's either irregular or it's using a spelling rule that you've not taught your learners yet. So for instance, the Y in jolly, yeah, that was that jolly has got an irregular spelling, it's got an alternative spelling, that your learners haven't been taught yet, so they're going to spell it incorrectly to begin with. So tricky words are words that are either irregular, and part of them is irregular, or that they are words that contain a spelling rule that you haven't taught your learners yet. And so what Jolly Phonics does, if we have a look at the next screen, we've got a list of tricky words, and so there's 72 tricky words to look at. And so those words are just high frequency words, words that your learners will come across in their writing often, and that especially if they're being asked to write something from their own thoughts, it's a case that there will be words that learning the tricky words will be really valuable to being able to do that. Okay, so it's important, first of all, when looking at these tricky words, to identify what part of the word is trying to trick us, and really thinking about that. And then you can also make sure that you're practicing that using look, say, copy, cover, write, check. So if you remember that from Matthews, he was saying, I look, so you can say this with me. So I look, I say, and then it's I copy, so it's like you're looking at somebody else's, but that's when a student copies the word down, and then you cover that up, you say I cover, write, check. So it's I look, I say, I copy, I cover, write, check. Okay? I didn't do that very well, I'm sorry. But so what that looks like in reality in a lesson is that you would have these words on the board. So you might have words on the board that you want your learners to practice. Okay? So it starts off with where we're looking at the word. So you might look at the word, and so let's look at the word was. Let's start with the second word there. And so we can see that all of the letters in was are small letters. Okay? We can also look at the word and think, well, actually, here, if I was trying to read that, I would say was. It was. Okay? But it's important to highlight to your learners that actually this word is trying to trick us, and that although the letter W is still saying a W, the letter A and the letter S are trying to trick us. The letter A is not saying A, and the letter S is not saying S, but instead the A is making an O sound, and the S is making a Z sound. And so you can talk it through with your learners like that, because by this point, once you've gone through the 42 sounds, your learners should be familiar now with the letter names as well. So you can be talking in terms of letter names. And in fact, when we're spelling tricky words, we are going to be using the letter names of the letters involved in the tricky word. Okay, so we look at the word, we talk about it a bit as well. And then we're going to do, so we look, the saying, is that we're going to practice saying W-A-S. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about the letters in it as well. And you can actually get your learners to practice saying it as the way it's spelled. So you could say was. So was, was. Was is was. And then you get them to copy that down in their books. And they've got to make sure that they're spelling it right. So once they've copied it, you want to make sure that they've copied it correctly, because then they're going to cover up the words in their book. They're going to try and write it from memory. So that's when you need to make sure it's rubbed off of the board and they've got it covered up, but they're trying to write it from memory. So you saw that in the video just now. And then they can uncover it, have a look, check whether they've got it right. If they've got it right, well done. If they've got it wrong, what bit did they get wrong? What can they learn from the mistakes that they've made? Okay, then they cover it up again, and then they try and write it again. And then they look again. If they've got it right, well done, give themselves a tick. If they've got it wrong, what did they get wrong? Why did they get it wrong? And make sure they get it right the next time. And it's just writing it out maybe 3 or 4 times just to practice making sure that they know what part of the word is trying to trick us. And if they can remember that, then that's going to help them to learn the tricky word. And so when you're practicing tricky words, you can do look, say, copy, cover, write, check. That's when we're trying to learn them. But you can also revise them with your learners. You can have these tricky words up on your wall as a display. Every time you learn a new tricky word, you could write it on some card and then you can stick it to your wall. And you can even then use those cards as kind of flashcards to revise as well. And so think of all of those games that we play for sound revision, and actually nearly all of those games can be adapted to be used for tricky word revision as well. So we've got a video to show this from one of the teachers that has submitted this as part of her TZZ point. So let's have a look at this now. So this is coming from Fanny in Chilabomwe, I think you are. You'll have to correct me. I think you're tuning in today. So let's see. So you saw exactly how that works. What the teacher's done is that she's used the do as I do, which is normally for sounds and actions, but instead she's holding up flashcards with tricky words that she's already taught her learners. So this is a revision of that. But you can also do come and dance. You can hand out these tricky words on flashcards to your learners around the classroom, and then you can do if you hear your word, come and dance, and then you could say was, come and dance, and then everybody that's got was can stand up and dance and show off their flashcard. Okay, so you can use that. There's also other songs that you can do or activities. You could play fly swat game